So there's a lot of spooky units in Total War Warhammer 3, and I don't mean kind of ghost spooky or gonna do some weird stuff to you spooky. I mean the kind of unit you see on the battlefield and go, oh scheisse, I need to do something about them, or they're going to absolutely ruin my life. So here's 10 units that absolutely shit me up. First up, some little fellas, the Grudge Rakers for the Dwarfs. These are just absolute destroyers of everything, and I'll also include Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses in this one because they're basically the same unit and equally as terrifying. While they might be short in range and stature, they hit incredibly hard on whatever they shoot at. Infantry, cavalry, monsters, your own infantry if you're not careful. A single unit of Grudge Rakers can blast Scarbrand out of existence in a mere 5 volleys at the edge of their range, meaning they're at their least accurate. So you can imagine if they were closer or there was more than one unit shooting at him, he'd be gone in less than 30 seconds. So whenever I see this unit on the battlefield, I know to keep my distance, especially with my Large and Lord, and try to disrupt them somehow, get them into melee so that they can't use their ranged weapon, because their damage output is just so quick. They can delete any of your units very quickly if you're not careful. So you don't want to mess around when it comes to Grudge Rakers and Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses. Next, if there's any unit in this game that makes me go, ugh, it's probably the Plague Drones for Nurgle. They're basically a flying monstrous infantry, and while they don't have a ton of armor, they do have a 20% physical resistance, and they get extra melee defense when they're in melee, so they can actually be pretty tough and difficult to get rid of. Not to mention they can be healed by Nurgle spells, and then of course when it comes to their damage output, they're not messing around there either, with over 100 weapon strength, armor piercing, poison and magical attacks as well. And then of course there's the fact they're a flying unit, they got lots of mobility, they can disrupt your ranged units. They can be an absolute pain in the ass. In true Nurgle fashion, they're quite difficult to kill, and that's just the melee version. There's also a ranged version as well with a very strong ranged attack, and they of course bring even more problems and damage potential. So yeah, a lot of damage output, a lot of staying power, and difficult to get rid of. Always one of the first units I look to get rid of whenever I see them in a Nurgle army. They're mostly terrifyingly tanky. And you know what else is terrifyingly tanky? The sponsor of today's video,
War Thunder.
Offering you the most comprehensive experience in vehicle combat, War Thunder offers over 2,500 tanks, planes, jets, helicopters and ships from all across the world and from the modern day all the way back to the 1920s, so you can finally roleplay as your own granddad. It's available on PC, Xbox, PlayStation and mobile for the low price of nothing. It's completely free. And it has something for everyone. There's different game modes, some of them more arcadey and fast-paced if that's your thing, or if you prefer it more realistic, more simulation, well, it's got you covered there too. And the level of detail in the weapon combat system itself is pretty nuts. You've got engines, fuel tanks, weapons, crew, all of which can be individually taken out to weaken your enemies and eventually destroy them. I personally enjoy the X-ray damage view that lets you see exactly where your rounds are going and what damage they're doing, because I'm just a nerd like that. So why not immerse yourself in the detailed and authentic world of War Thunder? You can join its already millions of players in massive PvP combat. So check out the links below, and if you're a new player or returning player that hasn't played for more than 6 months, you'll get this tasty pack when you use the links below to get a 7-day premium account, 50% XP boost, and some premium vehicles and all the other stuff you see there too. That's only for PC and console though, and for a limited time. Thanks again to War Thunder. Next, a personal favourite unit, but one that I do not mess around with, Grenade Outriders for the Empire. In terms of their cost to damage ratio, they've got to be up there as one of the best units in the game. That is, they're not that expensive, but they can put out a ton of damage, namely to infantry. This here is about a balanced high elf army's worth of infantry, and a mere 2 units of Grenade Outriders can ruin the lot of it, 8 units. Granted, this is a controlled situation that wouldn't realistically be possible, but the fact that they can do 3 or 4 grand's worth of damage is pretty nuts for this not that expensive unit. And of course, they're highly mobile, very quick, can get into position easily, and set up for some nasty volleys. But for all their damage-dealing strength, they are very much a glass cannon. They can't really take damage themselves, they're very light on the armor. You can shoot them down pretty quick. If you get them in melee, they're done. And because the AI is always on skirmish, you can just chase them around so they can't settle and fire and make them ineffective that way until you can get a hold of them. So quite easy to deal with once you recognize them as a threat, but if you leave them unchallenged, they could absolutely ruin you, or at least your infantry. Next, a unit that you pretty much can't hide from, the Poison Wind Mortars for the Scaven. The big danger of these units is 2 things. Number 1, they can get you from anywhere. With their mortar style attack, they can go up and over your army and land on whatever the hell they like. You can't maneuver to avoid them, you can't use terrain to avoid them, and even walls in a settlement aren't going to save you from them. And number 2, they're especially dangerous firing into a crowd. They're not terribly accurate, but firing into a crowd, they're bound to hit something, and thus they'll get some good damage done from their explosion and the damage over time that comes with their attack as well. And of course, being Skaven, they're not afraid to sacrifice their own to damage you, so you're not really safe from them anywhere, and while their damage output isn't terribly quick like the grenade outriders, it'll add up if you just let them do what they want and don't stop them. Now, of course, they are quite easy to stop if you've got some mobility that can get on top of them, but honestly, while this unit is very dangerous, it's not the scariest in the roster, and probably the scariest in the game to me, the motherfucking Death Globe Mortars. These absolutely shit me up a treat. Kind of a combination of this unit and the Death Globe Globadiers. They still have that mortar high arc of firing, so you simply can't avoid them, and their attack is kind of an airburst, so it blows up first and then scatters all over your lovely infantry and cavalry's faces and does an absolute metric arse ton of damage. So very similar to the Poison Wind Mortars, but fast damage output, way more dangerous. I typically won't go anywhere near this unit's range until I can try to deal with it somehow. This unit here has managed to do 3 grand's worth of damage in 3 minutes. That's 1,000 damage per minute. Disgusting. So whenever I see these in an enemy army, they are the first unit I go for without question. Next, a unit you probably can recognize even through the pixelation, and even with more pixelation, it is of course the Wrathmongers and their Regiment of Renown version, the Bloodwake Berserkers. These are obviously absolute melee powerhouses with crazy stats all across the board, making them good against just about anything, whether that's lords, single entities, cavalry, and of course infantry is their forte, but really they can smash just about anything out of existence. They got crazy melee attack, big weapon strength, a hefty charge bonus as well, not to mention frenzy and devastating flanker, so they are absolutely disgusting if you let them touch basically any of your units. So I deal with these in the same way I deal with the French. I don't go near them, I don't make eye contact, I just shoot them, blow them up, hit them with some magic, just anything to get rid of them before they get anywhere near you. So Wrathmongers, one of the first units in any Khorne army that gets my attention, to try and weaken them at least before they reach me, if not to mostly, hopefully, take them out. Next, another favourite unit of mine, the Hellb Blaster volley gun. I've loved this thing since day 1 of Warhammer 1. It lacks in the range a little bit compared to other artillery, but boy does it massacre elves incredibly well, and other stuff if you ever use it on that. So it's got a nasty amount of weapon damage, it's very accurate, so whatever the target, whether it's lords, heroes, single entities, infantry, cavalry, monsters, whatever, it absolutely nails it to the ground. So whenever I see these in an enemy army, I am especially careful around them. I'm going to be careful with my most expensive precious units, my Lord obviously, because I know that the AI likes to aim this type of thing directly at Lords as soon as possible, and will definitely punish you if you're not paying attention. Luckily though, being that they're a bit shorter in the range and incredibly immobile, they're not too hard to deal with. You might have to eat a volley or two, but after that, if you can get a hold of them, they usually won't be around too long. So it's just very strong against all kinds of enemies and can do its damage quickly, which compared to maybe the cannon or the Hellstorm rocket battery, those have more specific targets and more specific uses. Hellstorm just ruins everyone. This next one is a little bit of a nostalgic pick because this unit isn't as terrifying as it once was. It's the good old chosen great weapons for the Warriors of Chaos. These used to shit me up back in the day because they were mostly the king of chopping through any other kind of infantry, and so whenever I saw them I was like, oh shit, and they used to be something you'd have to worry about trying to deal with. But now with Warhammer 3, there's many more units that have probably surpassed them really. They've been relegated to being a mere tier 3 unit, but they still give me the creeps a little bit. Nowadays, it's probably the Chosen of Nurgle that I should have in this position because they're basically the same unit but better, and they're tier 4. They're mostly just considerably tougher. They've got more health, more melee defense, they've got poison which will protect them from damage, and being in the Nurgle army, they can be healed as well. So this ultimately gives them more damage output than any other kind of Chosen, and no matter what way you slice them, if they get a hold of you, they're going to do a lot of damage. So while my PTSD of fighting them back in the day is coming into play, Chosen are still pretty scary, especially the Chosen of Nurgle variety. Next, a unit I despise mostly because of its race, it's the Dark Elf Shades. These have always been and will always be a pain in the dick and balls. And while I despise them for simply being an elf, I do admire their military prowess. They've got incredibly strong ranged attacks, they're good in melee as well, and they have stalks so they could be super sneaky and pull off some nice ambushes. I think I have PTSD from these as well, facing nothing but armies of shades in online battles, which meant you had no idea where the enemy army was, and then they'd suddenly appear, and then you'd be getting shot in all directions with armor-piercing horrible bastard missiles. And again, missiles just very strong against everything potentially, great for taking down infantry cavalry monsters, big targets like this Dread Saurian, and they could be pretty versatile. You could have them behind your front line functioning like a normal missile unit but with some melee capability. You could have them out wide, you could use Vanguard deployment to flank with them and sneak up on the enemy. They're usually pretty self-sufficient as well, at least when you have a few units of them together. So a nightmare to deal with in numbers. Next, a unit it only takes one of to make me want to do a cry. It's the Dreadquake Mortar for the Chaos Dwarfs. This horrible piece of equipment has the ability to wipe out any single infantry unit with one volley, potentially. It'll do a ton of explosive damage when it lands, and then have that Dreadquake effect going on as well, so the damage just keeps racking up and there aren't too many units that are going to survive a good direct hit. That being said though, of course, it is fairly inaccurate, so it's not like a death sentence to go anywhere near it, but even the Dreadquake effect alone can still do a good bit of damage, even if you don't get hurt by the explosion too much. But if you've got any kind of bunched up troops or your units are too close together, you are likely going to be punished by the Dreadquake Mortar. And it's not just infantry that have to worry about it, cavalry can get done by it too. Monsters maybe not so much, but definitely a unit I try to get hold of as quickly as possible just to stop them from firing, even if I can't take it out quickly, although it can still keep firing I think when it's in melee, so that only helps so much. But you know, risk of friendly fire as well, so there's a chance it might hurt its own boys. But yeah, a single Dreadquake Mortar is terrifying enough. If there's 2 or 3 or more in an army, you better find a way to stop them quick. And lastly, maybe a bit of a weird one to some of you, but the Terracotta Sentinel is not a unit I take lightly. You see, in all my years of doing the Who's the Best videos where I test units against each other, I always find that the Terracotta Sentinel is capable of beating up single entity monsters that are much more expensive than it. And while it can be good against infantry or cavalry or monstrous infantry, it just always seems to do well beating the crap out of other single entities, whether that's monsters or lords and heroes. Hell, this thing can beat up Colex Suneater by itself, at least just about anyway. In this case, it is going to cost it its life, but hell, it did get the job done. And for the price it costs, that's a pretty damn good deal. So whenever I see one of these on the battlefield, I'm very careful with my lords, heroes and monsters because I know this thing can mess them up. Not to mention it can still beat up infantry and cavalry fairly well. By no means is it the scariest unit in the game, and if you've got some strong missiles, it's usually pretty easily dealt with. But if it goes after your lords or heroes, you better be careful. So there you go, 10 units that terrify me. I hope you've enjoyed this, thanks for watching, and again don't forget to check out War Thunder on PC, Xbox, PlayStation and mobile. If you're on PC or console and you're a new player or you haven't played for more than 6 months, you can get that sweet pack. Just have a gander on those links in the description. If you'd like to support the channel in other ways, do check out the Patreon or the YouTube memberships. Otherwise, I will see you in the future.